All right.
Can I start with telling you what I'm up to these days? Just give me 5 minutes, dear doctors. I will be with you because I am so excited about talking to you today, David. I can't tell you, doctor, and I'm not going to say your name. But things are happening. I mean, I picked up the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal today. It's been going on for 6 months. You are being poisoned by asbestos in baby powder. Wow, big deal. All right, I wrote the Associated Press, I wrote USA Today, I wrote Wall Street Journal, I wrote New York Times, I wrote the Oregonian, I wrote the Press Democrat, I wrote the Honolulu Advertiser. I said, this is old news, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get with it, or at least do an update on the stories I wrote 41 years ago. 41 years ago, what happened is in Hawaii, Honolulu. Excuse me for just taking the next 3 minutes to tell you the story, because it's what's on my mind. In Hawaii, I had just finished my residency, or maybe I was still involved in internal medicine, and they were running stories every day about the asbestos in the school walls in Honolulu or throughout Hawaii, and the shipyard workers that worked in World War II were exposed to asbestos, getting stomach cancer, lung cancer, etc. I mean, it was just terrible. And they were all upset. And I wrote the letter to the editor of the Honolulu Advertiser. I said, look, what are you so upset about the schools? We're eating tons, thousands of tons of asbestos every day in Hawaii because our rice contains asbestos. I waited for a week. I waited for a month. No letter to the editor. I called the editor. I got the assistant editor. He said, we're going to publish this crap. They will destroy the economy of Hawaii. I said, okay, fine. So I called George Chaplin, the editor of the Honolulu Advertiser. I said, look, this is the problem I'm having. You're poisoning the citizens of Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and California with talc asbestos-coated rice. Now, I want you to do something about it. Well, anyways, George Chaplin, he got a little upset with me, to say the least. But when I finally said, are you a newspaper or what? An advertisement for the talc rice industry? He finally said, okay, McDougall, you prove it's in the rice, and I'll put an article in the Honolulu Advertiser. So I went out. I was making $12,000 a year by that time, supporting 2 kids and a wife. I went out to various manufacturers, and first of all, they ran an article. They said, okay, we'll give you a little time. And Gustavo's going to put this up. It's from the Honolulu Advertiser, August 20th, 1978. They said experts disagree, and they gave the cancer industry an opportunity to refute everything I had to say. And I said, this is BS. I want to put the truth out, Mr. Chaplin. I want the truth out. You're the editor of this paper. He says, you prove it. I said, okay. So I had no money. But here, let's show the second effort I went to. I went to various companies. I said, I have no money. I know this will cost $100,000. I have no money. But I want you to know that millions of people are being poisoned by asbestos by eating rice. They said, okay, we'll buy it. So you can read about 3 companies that agreed to go in, and they bought at least 11 specimens of rice randomly off the shelves in Hawaii. Bought it, analyzed it, found rice in every single, asbestos in every single sample. They washed the rice, and they washed it up to 5 times. Every time they washed it, they got more asbestos out of it. Why? Because asbestos is the fibrous form of magnesium silicate. Talc is the amorphous form. They occur in the same deposits. You can't mine talc without mining asbestos. Asbestos is poisonous. It causes cancer. So within the next month, all of the rice in Puerto Rico, California, and Hawaii was now talc-free. It was coated with glucose only. And I looked and I said, wow, this is absolutely amazing. You think this talc cancer, ovarian cancer, Johnson baby powder thing is a big deal news? Excuse me. I wrote about it 41 years ago, and I fought the Honolulu Advertiser and basically everybody in Hawaii to tell them they're eating millions of tons of asbestos every year. Now, I wrote all the newspapers that I could think of, including the Wall Street Journal. I said, hey, guys, you're outdated. How about getting up to date? How about doing something to stop poisoning the people in this country and the world? And you can start with asbestos. So there's no asbestos since 1979 in Hawaii, in Puerto Rico, or California on the rice. So you can either eat white rice, glucose-coated, or brown rice like our next guest would recommend. Our next guest I've waited to meet for so many years. I've listened to him. I loved him. He's from Yale. He's a big, smart guy, very influential. and I never had a chance to meet him until I think it was 2001. I was in Washington, D.C., and my kind friends, I think it was the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, asked me to give a presentation. There were like 300-400 physicians, dietitians, professional people in the crowd, and I was so excited. I was so honored. If you want to watch that presentation, almost exactly, just go to the website, look for the Starch Solution. That's the video on my website, drmcdougall.com. And you can see the presentation I gave. I mean, how innocuous, how benign, how obvious that we are starch eaters. And I finished my talk on time, very animated, and the first guy up to the microphone to their next guest, and he thought I was full of bananas. He thought I was full of bananas. He did. Man, we talked for 15, 20 minutes, had a great old time together. And his next day's presentation was on the paleo diet. And I was excited to hear his views on the paleo diet, which I don't know what that is. It's somewhere between, who knows, eating dead squirrels to eating corn. I don't know what the paleo diet is. But I waited for his explanations. Today, in the last 9 years, my friend, Dr. David Katz from Yale University, MD, MPH, has, I don't know, has he changed? Has he progressed? What does he think now? Should we eat paleo? What is paleo? I want to know, Dr. Katz. I've been waiting for 9 years to talk to you, and we have communicated by email. We are, I would say we're compatriots. We're friends. Prove it to me, Dr. Katz.
John, for sure we are, John. So I think the first thing to say, regarding the story about rice and asbestos is thank you. Because, regardless of, where we fall on details of nutritional epidemiology, which we can get into now, I think everybody listening in is obligated to thank you, acknowledge you for indefatigable service over a span of decades to public health. What matters most to me is that, you're somebody who follows through on your convictions. You're totally devoted to improving the human condition. I love you for that. I salute you for that. I applaud you for that. And I thank you for that. And, obviously, as you say, millions of people are beneficiaries of your tireless effort on behalf of public health. So first and foremost, thank you. And the fact that you were addressing this issue decades ago and it's back in the news now, it's a credit to you. The real leaders among us are people who don't wait for everybody to recognize the nature of a problem. They're ahead of the rest of us. They're pointing it out. They're leading the way. So again, thank you, John. So
I appreciate it. And you know what? For 50 years, my dad and everybody around me have said you're way ahead of your time with the Canadian dietary guidelines and the Eat Lancet Commission reports. I'm no longer ahead of my time. I mean, it's well,
that's the thing. I mean, one of two things happens when you're ahead of your time. Either your time catches up to you, or your time mows you down. It doesn't mean you were wrong. It just means nobody ever comes around. I mean, sometimes what's right does not prevail in the world, and all we can do is try. So, it's a good scenario when eventually everybody around you catches up and says, "Hey, this guy was leading in the right direction all along."
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get into a little bit about diet. And no, I never specifically advocated the paleo diet, and I don't recall giving a talk about it, although it's possible. And I would agree with you that
popular back then, 10 years ago.
What's that?
Still, but you that was really the state of the art.
Yeah, well, yes and no. So here's I don't specifically recall the details, but the thing is, adaptation, evolutionary biology. You could say, the people who want to make some specific case about the Stone Age and, therefore we should eat meat, generally that's ideology. They've got a dog in the fight, as it were. But all of us who are scientists and who understand there's a reason why we Homo sapiens breathe air and not water, accept the crucial role of evolutionary biology, right? So we are adapted to eat certain things. We're not adapted to eat other things. Koala bears can subsist entirely on eucalyptus leaves. They're toxic for us. Giant pandas can eat bamboo. It would not nourish us. So adaptation is key. Lions have to eat meat. Horses don't eat meat. Lions can eat horses. Round and round we go. So, I think there's a relevant set of insights from the genuine experts in Paleolithic nutrition, I'm not one of them. Boyd Eaton is one of them. Mel Connor is one of them. Anthropologists and other scientists who really studied this. And those insights have to do with, what do we think our native nutrient intake levels were? What do we think the native range of human dietary adaptation was? All of that's helpful. But then, I agree with you. You started out saying, I don't know what our Paleolithic ancestors ate. Well, nobody knows exactly. It's hard enough for us to know what the heck we ate yesterday in detail, let alone what people ate 30,000, 50,000, 100,000 years ago. So there are wide error bars around those estimates, and there was clearly a range, right? And one of the interesting things is that people adapted to a wide variety of geographical areas over time and environmental circumstances, and the diets varied. What we know is, we're constitutional omnivores, so we have the option of deriving the nutrition we need from plants or from a combination of plants and animals. But I think where you and I agree entirely is that in a modern world of 8 billion Homo sapiens, prone to obesity and chronic disease, and by the way, ravaging the planet, the plant choice is the better choice. And
you become passionate about this.
I absolutely. Well, I've always been passionate about it. I've always eaten that way myself. I haven't eaten mammals since I was a kid because, just ethical reasons, let alone the health effects. But, I've always had dogs. I have a horse. I love them. How can it be that these guys are members of my family and somebody an awful lot like them is dinner? So that just never worked for me. So when you look across the expanse of human health and nutritional epidemiology, the ethical treatment of our fellow species and the environmental impact we're having, the argument for a plant-exclusive diet or some very close approximation of it is extremely compelling. If you look exclusively, and this, John, may be where we differ a little, but, I think that's okay. I think well-informed people, it's really important to note that, our common ground is 85%, 90% of the whole, right? And then
I agree. I think you have, I've seen you and I have communicated by email many times, and I get your weekly blogs, which are great, by the way.
Thank you.
I have detected a movement on your part, or maybe it's my imagination or wishful thinking. I've detected a movement on your part toward more of what the Canadian Dietetic Association clearly says, toward what the E-Commission clearly says. In fact, I almost feel tears coming through your emails about the environment. You must have children at least and be scared to death about what's happening.
I have children. Yeah.
You're a leader. I want to know, is that true?
Yep. Yeah. No. So I have 5 children, and I'm scared to death. And so here's the deal. So, my knowledge of nutrition and my, concern about other critters has always had me eating a predominantly plant-based diet. But my wife, who does the cooking, is from southern France originally. So our sort of the native Katz family diet with my wife at the helm has been a Mediterranean diet, right? So, overwhelmingly plant-based, but with some poultry, which I no longer eat, some fish and seafood, which I now eat very minimally.
Fish, so hurry up, get them all. They're only about 10% left when I started fishing. But
that's the thing. So that, as you say, John, so my concerns about diet encompass human health, what we know about the specific health effects on human bodies of different dietary patterns, environmental impact, because frankly, there are no healthy people on a ruined planet. So if we're not all thinking about that, we're living under a rock left behind by a melting glacier. And then ethics. And, the simple fact is that, I don't think it was unethical for Stone Age hunters to hunt, but I think it's very unethical for 8 billion modern Homo sapiens to engage in factory farming, which basically, abuses animals throughout their lives just so they can be slaughtered and eaten. So it's inefficient, it's cruel and abusive, and it's environmentally devastating. And by the way, bad for health because, everything about that product is corrupted throughout that process. So, I've always felt this way, but the shift you've noticed, and I completely agree with you, is, again, the emphasis is shifting more and more toward what we're doing to the planet. I routinely now say at the podium, as a health professional in 2019, if you are not talking about carbon emissions, if you're not talking about climate stabilization, if you're not talking about preserving our aquifers, if you're not talking about environmental conservation, you are not addressing the key health issue of our time, and you're at the margins of what matters. That whole proposition has changed. And this is why our field, lifestyle medicine, I think is moving into the vanguard. Most of medicine doesn't have much of anything to do with environmental impact, but we do. When we talk to people about lifestyle, it's
a few friends. But Dr. David Katz MD, PhD from Yale University, former president of ACLM, how are our colleagues doing? I somehow or another, the people I'm in Portland now, the people at OHSU seem to miss it. Instead, they find $150,000 drugs for MS that don't work more preferable than giving them a banana and a potato. How are your colleagues at Yale responding to the truth?
Well, my audience, like yours, John, is a lot bigger than Yale. So Yale has a number of programs devoted to environmental impact, and I would say the university is pretty committed to this. They're committed to divesting. So university obviously has a lot of money invested, and they're divesting from fossil fuel companies and various allocations that potentially conspire against the solution. So you see a lot of action at the administrative level of the university. But my colleagues and yours are the True Health Initiative. So this is a global coalition of enlightened professionals from over 40 countries who agree that the only diet that is healthy and worth talking about is a sustainable, healthy diet. I do have children, and I'm not interested in eating food that's good for me that's going to leave them hungry. I'm not interested in eating in a way that's going to leave them thirsty. I'm not interested in eating in a way that's going to leave them in a world deprived of the beautiful biodiversity this planet offered us. So more and more, I think people are coming around to that, and I think there's this confluence of I'm a health professional and I'm a concerned citizen of the world. And the one place where you really can express both of those passions is in the realm of lifestyle. If we shift people's dietary patterns, we can add years to life, we can add life to years, and we can actually do something about saving the planet. You show me the pill or the syringe that can do all of that. We're not
talking about lifestyle. Excuse me, Dr. David Katz from Yale. You are talking about diet, period. Not exercise, not sunshine, not cleaning up bad habits. You and I, and we got to focus on this, is we got to fix the food. The food is the only thing that counts right now. I mean, there are other important things, but it's the food. So let's not talk about diet and lifestyle. Let's get it right focused on what you and I know will make the difference, 100-fold difference tomorrow. And that's going from beef to beans and barley.
Yeah, and so I do, John, as you know. My preferential focus is diet nutrition. My latest book, The Truth About Food, with all proceeds going to support the True Health Initiative, all about diet. I've written multiple editions of a nutrition textbook. That's my preferential focus. But on the other hand, I have 25 years of patient care, so not as many as you, but a lot of experience. And I do think it's fair to acknowledge, and our friend Dean Ornish would be first in line to talk about a holistic approach. So I think that the reason to mention lifestyle as something bigger than just diet is people who are looking at the full lifestyle equation are generally much better equipped to make the desired and necessary shifts in their diet. It's hard to do if you're completely stressed out. It's hard to do if you don't feel good about yourself because you're so physically inactive. And so, they tend to be self-supporting things. That I talk about the 6-cylinder engine of lifestyle medicine: feet, physical activity; forks, dietary patterns; fingers, no smoking; sleep, stress, and love. And each of those really is supportive of the others. When you're sleeping enough and managing stress, you've got more motivation to say, okay, I want to be a good citizen of the world. So like you, I focus on diet, but these things, in terms of getting human behavior to shift, I think that holistic approach really does have value.
But Dr. Katz, I had Dr. Dean Ornish, our longtime friend, on the show just recently, and I asked him, if stress is so important, if exercise is so important, if sunshine is so important, if love is so important, then why in the heck did the prisoners of war in all wars that I'm aware of get the same results I get at my clinic with all the stress in the world, facing being killed every day, not being loved by anybody, and they got the same drop in blood pressures, cholesterol, and it would do the same positive thing for the planet to put them on the prisoner of war diet. Excuse me, it's the food. And people need to focus on the food, but you're right, all those things help. To have a good attitude, support, and to love are very important.
Yeah. So again, my focus, like yours, is that, but I can't answer your question. And I think, to be fair, starvation and acute serious infection.
All the rights you want in my prison camp.
No. I'm just telling you, a bout of cholera will cause your cholesterol and blood pressure to fall. It doesn't mean it's good for you. So you and I, our interest is not just your blood pressure and your cholesterol went down in 6 weeks. Our interest is the long-term proposition of more years in life, more life in years. And so, yes, diet is a centerpiece, but the evidence, for example, that physical activity plays a role in health throughout the lifespan is overwhelming. So again, I would argue my purview is lifestyle, and some of those other elements probably do have.
I just worry about the distraction. Well, I can't do all the lifestyle, so let's just forget the food. I don't have time to clarify. I got 10 years. That's your kids do. They got 12. That's it. So we either tell them what they need to fix, or we still give them a couple of scapegoats. So I can do the exercise. I'm out there in the sun every day. Haven't smoked ever. Don't drink. But bacon and steak is real good for me. And 1 out of 6 ain't bad. And you know what? It's bad. It's the worst. It's the only thing that really counts. If you don't do that, the other 5 don't count, because everything's going to be gone very shortly.
With a focus on the planet, I would agree. So, again, the case I'm
cure rheumatoid arthritis, heart disease, etc., in the same prison camp with the same rice, because they proved it in the Korean and Vietnam War.
Yeah, but I don't think if you're arguing that over the lifespan, diet's important, physical activity doesn't matter, I'm going to have to disagree with you.
I think physical activity is very important.
Okay.
I could sit in a cell and get the same results by sitting and not moving 3 feet as I would by exercising 10 miles a day.
Well, not in terms of your muscle mass or functional capacity. Yes, in terms of your blood pressure, maybe.
I don't want diabetes. I don't want to shoot myself with insulin. I don't want to take cancer.
Again, I don't think anybody listening wants to go to a prison camp. So listen, here's the thing. There was a study, I'm sure you're familiar with it, out of Loma Linda about 2 years ago, suggesting that if the typical American would routinely swap out beef for beans, just that switch all by itself could achieve something like 50 to 60% of the greenhouse gas emission reduction pledged in the Paris Accord. Yeah, I mean, if we're talking to people, what's the one thing you can do that will have the greatest impact on your personal health and is the most actionable thing for you as an individual related to the climate and the environment? It's eat plants and stop eating animals. I
believe in sunshine. In fact, one of the things I regret about moving to Portland, except that we have global warming here now, so now I can get sunshine. And the other thing is I do somewhere between 8 and 12 floors of stairs a day at least. And I'm healthier than when you saw me in 2001.
You look great. You look excellent. Hey, I believe it.
So exercise, I think, is extremely important, which we have neglected, but it's food.
Yeah, but I want to add something to food. So I want to point out something to people. So I reviewed, back when it came out, I reviewed for Nature, Marion Essel's book, Soda Politics. And, I mostly know about all the nefarious machinations of the big soda companies, but I will tell you the one thing that was sort of an epiphany for me in reviewing the book, and that is it takes up to 600 liters of water to produce 1 drinkable liter of Coca-Cola in a plastic bottle. Now, about 1/3 of that water goes to the production of the plastic bottle, but 2/3, so, 400 liters of water to produce a liter of Coke. So I think people need to understand when we're talking about the environment, it's not enough to talk about don't eat animals, eat plants, because Coca-Cola is not made from animals.
Well,
but highly processed food, we really need to be moving closer and closer to foods direct from nature. The less processing, the fewer the steps, the less there's a factory involved, the greater the reduction in environmental impact. And that's a crucial part of the puzzle too.
and Boca burgers. You must hate them because they're environmentally a catastrophe. You don't serve those to your family, I'm sure.
No.
They get plain potatoes and beans and rice. But a lot of our followers out there are going for the fake meats and the fake cheeses, and that's okay as long as you don't do it very long, because you're killing the planet and yourself.
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of the big concerns, I think, about this. You know, we're just going to engineer our way to alternatives to meat. Yeah, well, first of all, what is the nutritional quality of what you're producing? And secondly, right, I mean, are you involving factories that are doing all the damage that eating the animals would have done to the planet? So it may address the ethical issue, but nothing else. And so, yeah, I mean, we have to always beware of the law of unintended consequences, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing we know for sure works is moving to plants direct from nature, minimally processed foods. So, you know, if you mostly are eating vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds, and drinking plain water when thirsty, you're not going to go too far wrong. If you do anything other than that, all bets are off.
Well, we need to convince our leaders. Well, and I want you to know, if you see this happening, we need to convince our leaders that the public needs to know this. We need to convince the Burger King hamburger eating guy up there that he needs to tell the public to stop eating Burger King and Kentucky Fried Chicken. We need Barack Obama, President Modi, President Putin. We need everybody to stand up there and say, you know what? Tomorrow we can save the planet by listening to the doctors. Katz, he knows the answer. He can save the planet. And you're important enough, Dr. Katz, at Yale University, published in scientific literature, to get that hamburger-eating, Burger King-eating president to listen to you. So, are you going there tomorrow?
Yeah, would that were so. So here's what I'll say, John. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. Secondly, you know, I'd love it for people to check out the True Health Initiative, because I don't think any one of us, not you with all your decades of great service to public health, and certainly not me, is powerful enough alone to persuade all the people who need to be persuaded, whether they're, you know, in the White House or elsewhere. But in unity, there is strength. And so the purpose of the True Health Initiative is to say, look, those of us who care about these things, about the human condition, about biodiversity, about lions and tigers and bears and dolphins and sea otters, about the rainforests, about the future for our children, about the planet, about the ethical treatment of our fellow creatures, those of us who care about these things are more alike than different. We have a lot of common ground. We may disagree about some details. Some may say more fat in the diet's good as long as it's extra virgin olive oil. Some may say not so much. We're more alike than different. Let's come together on the common ground, link arms, and sing Kumbaya. And so the True Health Initiative is an invitation to do that and say, let's defend that common ground in common cause, because coming together in our unity, we can change the world. You know, it's tempting to think about Margaret Mead, right? Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful and committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, nothing else ever has. So that, you know, that's a community that we're looking to grow. We already have membership from over 40 countries. TrueHealthInitiative.org. Add your voice to the course. You're already there, John, but I'm talking to the folks listening in.
You know, you're right. I may have overblown your position. You're not but I have to say something. I do mean it seriously, Dr. David Katz. I know personally Ornation, Esselstyn, and Campbell, and you know, they're my friends. I have to say, and I do mean it, even though we don't know each other as well as we will and should and could, I do think you're in a position. I do think you're smart enough. I do think you have the personality. I do think you're the man that should have been on Bill Maher instead of T. Colin Campbell. I think you should be sitting in the White House instead of anybody else. You know, you are a very, very good communicator. So please don't take that as an overstatement. It's not. You are there. You are in the number one position. That's why you got invited to be the president of the ACLM. And by the way, is the ACLM, which I helped found with Dr. Kelly financially and with good emotions back in 2004, are they making any progress? Should we put any effort into the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, or are they just another political organization that's taking money from drug companies, which they are, not drug companies, but commercial companies?
No, they're not. Yeah, I think ACLM is a beautiful operation. First of all, it's doubled in size every year for the past 5 years. We have, I think, 2,000 members now. We are the reason there are sister organizations sprouting all around the world, and everywhere people joining colleges of lifestyle medicine, societies of lifestyle medicine are having exactly this conversation. How do we add your life and life years. How do we protect this beautiful gem of a planet? How do we protect the future for our children? They are not talking about drugs. They're being very careful about whose money they take. You know, if you don't take anybody's money, it's hard to get the job done. They're very careful, very scrupulous. Now, you can be very, very proud of that legacy, John. You really can.
Well, you know, I'm going to actually, I will be there at the next meeting in October, end of October of 2019. Not by choice, but I'm honored. I refused the first time they offered it to me, but they offered me the position of Lifestyle Achievement Award for the fourth one given, and they did it behind my back. But my son, who's a doctor, says, "Dad, you got to be there." So I will be there at the end of October. I hope to see you there.
I've met your son. He's a lovely guy. I look forward to seeing you there, and it's a well-deserved honor, John.
He's going to become a member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, as he should have been.
Excellent.
And so he's going to be there a little longer with the kids, and I'm going to be there. Mary and I will be there, and maybe you and I can have dinner.
I look forward to that. That sounds great.
Anyway, I'm honored.
You keep on keeping on, and again, I do think the story you started with, it's inspiring because it's testimony, to staying the course over the long haul, fighting the good fight, never giving up. It's an inspiration. So, again, I want to end our conversation today where we started and say thank you. Well,
I'm either stubborn. I think I'm gonna leave it as stubborn.
Yeah.
Words I can think of.
Yeah, that's true. But stubborn in the service of a good cause.
The other S words.
That's all right. That's good.
All right.
Good combination.
Well, I just want you to know we have a team, and we can keep in communication. The public should know. Dr. David Katz, Ornish, Dr. Campbell, etc. We're trying. Everybody's trying. You're trying, and we need your help. And we got to fix this place because Dr. Katz has 5 children. I have 7 grandchildren, and we're not going to allow this to happen. Plain and simple. I'll take off my clothes, put carrots in both ears, stand in front of the United Nations and say, "Stop this!" I would like a potato. Will you join me? Okay, you can have pea pods in your ears.
I'm going to keep
David Katz, you're a great man.
Thank you very much, John.
All right.
Thank you.
I think we've had a wonderful time. We have a 10-day program coming up soon. I wanted Dr. Katz at my advanced study weekends, but unfortunately the snow was too heavy from his origin on the East Coast, and he didn't make it. But he's really a mover and a shaker. You better get to know him. You can get his blog. I get it twice a week, once a week at least. It's well worth your trouble. We are going to fix this place. I tell you, we got 12 years. 12 years. So, whatever you're going to do today, you're going to do something more, and that's to tell your friends and relatives that it's time to fix the problem.
People are asking if you wouldn't mind taking a couple of questions. What do you think?
Yeah, Dr. Katz, would you mind? I know you're still here. Thank you. Would you mind? Yeah, again, people, if you don't know what an honor and privilege it is to talk to this man from Yale, past president of American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and you better think twice and listen to this interview again. This is a life changer. Dr. Katz.
Yes.
Dr. Katz,
sure, thank you.
Dr. Katz, people are asking how they can sign up for your blog.
So the easiest thing to do, I distribute my blog now through LinkedIn. So I'll just make this one-stop shopping. Just go to davidkatzmd.com. That's my landing page. And right there, you can just go to my LinkedIn page. Actually, all of the blogs are shared via my website, too. So you can just sign up right there, davidkatzmd.com.
Well worth the read.
Thank you very much. Yeah, over the years, I blogged for the Huffington Post, for U.S. News and World Report, for Forbes, for lots of different outfits. But primarily now, I distribute it through LinkedIn.
Really? Why bother?
All right.
Why bother with the filters, right?
Right.
Could one of you or one or both of you talk a little bit about how a plant-based diet could be adapted to work with kids that are struggling with weight gain or meeting the expectation of their growth chart?
Well, I would make them do it, but I think Dr. Katz is the nicer person than I am. So I would just lock them up and throw all the bad food out of the house. That's the way I'd handle it. And I would tell them about their pimples and the poor lions that are being killed for various reasons. But I'm sure Dr. Katz with his 5 kids has a better explanation and a nicer one than I am.
Well, so Gustavo, if the question specifically about weight control.
With kids.
Yeah, but
kids
right, kids or adults, what I'd like to point out to people is the work of Michael Moss. So we haven't mentioned Michael Moss yet. Michael Moss he's not a scientist. He's not a physician. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist. He wrote a book called Salt, Sugar, Fat. It was excerpted in the New York Times Magazine. So I recommend people Google this. The cover story of the New York Times Magazine was, and I quote, "The Extraordinary Science of Addictive Junk Food," end quote.
But did you find a problem with Michael Moss with the book? I love the book myself. I had it on my shelf until October 9th, 2017. It was a phenomenal book, except he didn't end it. He forgot to tell us what to do.
Right. But that's because he doesn't overstep the bounds of his expertise. He was telling a story.
And this is pepperoni pizza.
Yeah, he's not a lifestyle medicine expert. He's not a scientist. It's just he told, again, what he revealed was, and this is the story I want to tell quickly.
I'm sure he didn't miss the diet part.
Well, in his next book may cover it. What he describes, and so for those of you listening in, if you don't know his work, just Google Moss addictive. You'll pull just those two words in the Google search box. You'll pull up the article. Read the article. It's very enlightening. But basically what he describes is how big food companies engineer foods we can't stop eating. And this is true for your kids as it's true for you. And what it means is if you eat all this highly processed food that some executive is being paid a bonus to make irresistible, you will overeat, you will get fat. The simplest way to reverse engineer the Moss effect is to eat foods that have an ingredient list one word long. And that would be everything in the produce aisle, right? So potato, broccoli, spinach, kale, walnuts. I mean, it goes on and on, lentils, beans, all that good stuff. So the closer you get to food where there's no room for mischief, the fewer the calories it takes to feel full. I mean, it is that simple, really. And so you reverse engineer this, I call it the Moss effect. And that you don't really have to worry about counting calories as a kid or as an adult. You can eat until you're full if you put your body in charge by giving it actual food. If you give it this engineered food stuff, it completely overwhelms our native defenses, and all of a sudden you are very subject to eating more calories than your body needs, and you will get fat, and the same is true for our kids. But make no mistake, John was very clear about his passions earlier. This is one of mine. We live in a culture where predatory profiteering generates a big fat bottom line for big corporate entities at the expense of the health of your children. And I'm looking for a great deal more parental outrage than I see. Yes, America runs on Dunkin', and multicolored marshmallows are part of a complete breakfast in our culture. And as long as we're willing to put up with that, this highly processed, adulterated food stuff that probably would glow in the dark if we turned out the lights, as long as we accept that junk is a food group, we are complicit in this. So,
all right, David Katz will be burning his draft card and his wife's bra next week to get this fixed. Will you answer another question?
I can do one more.
Really, we don't want to be out there in the streets protesting like we were in Vietnam.
Yeah,
I know you missed it by about 10 years.
I missed it.
I was
there. I'm sure you were.
We need to be there. We need to be there.
There clearly ought to be outrage about the fact. I mean, what Moss writes about is a cause for collective outrage, and I'm not seeing nearly enough of it.
Maybe prison terms. Next question, Dave. Next question from Gustavo to Dr. Katz, please.
Well, Dr. Katz, people are asking if you don't mind saying, what do you eat in a regular day?
So I'll give an answer, and then I will refer people to my wife's recipe site, where everything that the Katz family eats is not just on display, but all the recipes, and my wife films herself in our kitchen cooking the stuff. So basically, it's the Katz family greatest recipes for all the world's use. Cuisinicity.com. So it's like Cuisine City with an I in the middle. Cuisinicity.com. Everything I eat is there. But my typical day would be my breakfast is pretty much the same every day. So it's a mix of berries. I must admit I have an expensive breakfast. So it's blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, other fresh fruit in season, usually some walnuts mixed in, and either steel-cut oats or a comparable cold cereal. I tend to like Nature's Path, Heritage Flakes or multigrain flakes, minimally processed, very little added sweetener or salt. And frankly, I usually don't put anything over that, but sometimes a little bit of almond milk. That would be breakfast.
For dinner.
And
you only eat three things for dinner. What are the
that?
3 different meals you and your wife have for dinner every week?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what Mary and I do. We only have we have 4,000 recipes published, but we eat 3 different things a week. That's it.
Yeah.
What are your 3 favorites?
So my wife, yeah, so we have a lot of my wife grew up in southern France, actually born in Algeria. So we have a lot of North African inspired meals. So vegan tagine, with a mix of potatoes, other root vegetables and chickpeas. My wife does a fabulous Tuscan bean soup. We have a number of whole grain pasta dishes that we love. A number of dishes based on lentils and beans. And again, at this point, I very occasionally eat fish and seafood still, so I'm not strictly vegan. And I know, John. Yeah. Very careful.
I've killed more fish than you have, buddy, but I don't touch them these days. How about you got 5 kids? Which 3 of them don't follow the diet?
I think they're all on the program. I think everybody's pretty much on the program.
My kids.
Variations on the theme, but all pretty similar. So some are a little more like kind of the native Mediterranean diet we started with. I know, one is more adamant about being uniformly vegan than I am. But again, everybody's pretty close. And I've got 5 healthy, lean kids, who are just beneficiaries of growing up with a healthy diet. But again, so that, a typical day, would be that I like a nice glass of wine with my dinner paired to match the.
I used to once upon a time before a glass turned to 2 glasses.
Right. Well, and it's a good point. It's a double-edged sword for sure. Dose is crucial.
Right.
And I could keep going. I haven't had a soda in, I think, 45 years. I drink water when I'm thirsty. I snack on fresh fruit, dried fruit, nuts. My diet is overwhelmingly vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds, and water for thirst. And then, those reassembled. But again, lots of great recipes. And on the Cuisinicity site, again, it's all freely accessible to everybody. You can search by dinner, lunch, snacks, breakfasts, kinds of food. So, it's really useful. And the recipes are all there. And my wife's cooking tips are all there. So it's a far more detailed answer, Gustavo, than I can give you in the time we have.
It obviously works because you're a whole enhancement. So let's get another question. Patient not have another question.
The lady that asked the question about kids actually was asking the opposite. And she asked me to please ask it again. She was asking how the plant-based diet could be, adapted to actually for kids that
they're not growing fast enough. Yeah. So first of all, in all of the studies that have compared, say, vegetarianism or strict veganism to mixed diets on developmental milestones in kids, there's no reduction in height, there's no reduction in developmental milestones, but there is a significant reduction in obesity. So one of the things I would say is maybe you're worrying about the wrong problem. I mean, if your pediatrician's saying, hey, they're not hitting the height targets, maybe there's an issue there. But more likely, here's what's going on. You look around, you think what you see in everybody else's kids is normal, but actually everybody else's kids are overweight because these days overweight is normal, and your kids are perfectly fine. For example, my son, growing up on our plant-predominant diet, he was just thin as a rail, but wiry and strong, and he was, springing up like a weed in terms of his height. He's now 6'2", big hunk of muscle. Just perfectly strong, perfectly healthy. But he was just never prone to obesity. But so I'm just saying, you could have thought, comparing my son to his peers, this kid's too skinny, and there was a lot of that kind of discussion. But no, he's perfectly normal, and so I don't know the person asking this question if that's the case. If you are thinking, if you've got some objective feedback that there's a concern about them getting enough calories and so forth, there are some very both nutrient and energy dense plant foods that you can turn to. Nuts and nut butters, seeds, for example, avocado. These are foods that have a lot of great nutrient value, and they are concentrated sources of calories. If
long live the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Next question, Dr. Tolosa for Dr. Katz. Dr. David Katz, Familia.
I think we need to then close the webinar. But we have someone, or actually a couple of people asking about, Are lectins in beans really toxic?
No,
Oh,
it's absurd. Yeah, Dr. Grundy, he's done horrible damage. So here, if I may, John, just quickly. First of all, nobody eats beans raw, right? I mean, the kinds of beans where lectins are an issue, you always cook them. It denatures the lectins. And the longest lived populations on the planet, you know, the blue zone population, one of the mainstays in all those diets is routine consumption of beans. The idea that you can't eat beans because they contain lectins is directly analogous to the idea that you can't breathe because air contains oxygen and oxygen's a toxic. It is absurd. It's idiotic. And if you think it's a good idea, try holding your breath for the rest of your life. I mean, you know, Gundry's advice makes as much sense as just stop breathing, right? So it's wrong. And by the way, everything we're talking about, if I may, so that, you know, my new book, John, is just out, The Truth About Food. You can get it on Amazon. All proceeds, I don't get $1. Everything goes to the True Health Initiative. And everything I know, based on 30 years of work in this space, is in that book. There's a whole section on lectins. So, you know, please check that out. You're supporting a worthy cause. What's that?
I want to hear the name again of the book.
The Truth About Food.
All right. I will have a copy in my nighttime reading, the daytime reading, because I'm sure it'll keep me awake.
Very good. Thank you. So, yeah, Gustav, I think
the take one more question, because I know you have an appointment with some dignitaries that really are going to make a difference. So one more question, Dr. Katz from Yale University, MD, PhD, past president of the McDougall Lifestyle Medicine. My new friend, who I met 9 years ago, who's going to really, I mean, I'm not joking. Watch out for this man, because if you're in his path, suddenly you're going to get run over, and we're going to save the planet and your children and your life. So one more question, Dr. Katz, and then I will thank you for your precious time.
Thank you, John.
Dr. Pelosi, you have another question for this gentleman.
Well, one more, and that's it. One more. Is it important to supplement with probiotics?
How about any vitamins? You take any supplements, Dr. Katz?
I do. So I take a probiotic. And I'll tell you why. I had a very specific reason. I found that in my old age, I was suddenly having a hard. Yeah, I know. I was suddenly having a hard time eating nuts, which I love. I was developing some abdominal discomfort, and I thought, well, I don't want to give up nuts. I love them. Let me see if a probiotic changes the relationship, and it did. So, you know, if I take a probiotic, a multi-strain probiotic, pretty routinely, I have no trouble eating almonds and walnuts, which I love. In general, the argument would be that no matter how careful we are, and despite good efforts like John's, there are contaminants in the food supply we can't avoid. We get exposed to antibiotics. They're in the food supply. They're in the groundwater. And these things can kill off friendly bacteria that then need to be replaced. You can potentially do it with food. Having an optimal diet is probably the single most important way to have an optimal balance in your microbiome, but I do believe in supporting it with a probiotic. I also take vitamin D because I'm not out in the sun as often as I might like, John.
That's scary. Go ahead.
Yeah, and
I'm worried about you, Dr. Katz.
Yes, thank you. I take an algae-based omega-3 supplement as well, because I don't eat fatty fish nearly as often as I used to, because I don't eat fish very often anymore because I'm concerned about the oceans. And although we can convert alpha-linolenic acid to long-chain omega-3s, we don't do that very efficiently, and there's some advantage in getting the long-chain omega-3s directly from algae, and algae is a perfectly sustainable source, so I take that as well. So it's a short list.
Well, you know what? Those, like you said, we have a team that doesn't agree on everything, but only the important things. So when you eat Dr. Katz's diet, Dr. Ornish's diet, Dr. Campbell's diet, or Mary McDougall's diet, it's all the same. Basically, if you want to do a little supplements, you want to exercise more, etc. It's not important. The important thing is you get the food right, and Dr. Katz is talking same story. If two people on the other side of the country started out with completely different ideas can tell you the same thing, then maybe we're close to the truth. And Dr. Atkins and his friends and followers, like the Wheat Belly and the other the other less informed people out there are trying to tell you. Thank you, Dr. Katz. It's probably the best, well, one of the best interviews I've had.
Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure.
You know, it's only a 4-hour flight from 5 hours from Portland to Washington, so I can get a Burger King and a Kentucky Fried Chicken bowl. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
And we will be back next week, because you missed last weekend where we had 200 people at our weekend. We had a wonderful time. What a great experience. And we'll have Dr. Katz at Live Santa Rosa sometime soon. And our next advanced study weekend is in 6 months. It got sold out. But our next 10-day program where Dr. Lim and I actually gave 5 hours of lectures 5 days ago. Dr. Lim and I will take care of you. He's a better doctor than I am as far as patient care. He'll take care of you in April and in June and July and August, and we have a whole bunch of 10-day programs. So if you're tired of living the life that you don't deserve, and instead you'd rather live the life you do deserve and cut your food bill by 80% and fix the planet and make Dr. Katz happy and Dr. Campbell happy and be happy, well, just come to the 10-day program or join us some way. Everything's free on the website. So if you feel like it's too big of an expense, then it's free on the website, drmcdougall.com. It has been a pleasure. And of course, I must thank with all the enthusiasm, and it's not hard to muster, my good friend, Dr. Gustavo Pelosa. You play a great webinar. Gustavo.
Thank you. It's always my pleasure.
You're amazing. Thank you. We are going to be back in 2 weeks. I don't know. Do I have a guest? If I don't, I probably can do the show myself. Don't forget the rice articles. Send this to your newspaper. It can be gotten at newspaper.com. You can download it yourself. You know what? This is a bunch of garbage, Telp and Johnson. It's garbage only because we've known it for 50 and more years, and I wrote about it 41 years ago. 2 pages in the Honolulu Advertiser. They hit national headlines. Excuse me, we're wasting time, just like the heart disease and meat, just like cancer and animal foods. And good grief, when are we? I know when. I know when things are going to change. When truth and success are more important than money. See you all next week. Ain't going to happen, but I love you all and see you next week. Good night. Thank you.